Thank God it's Monday. What a treat to work together through a text that is so crucial for our everyday lives. Today I want to talk about conflict resolution. Uh-oh. The world is in conflict. We had 27 wars last year worldwide. Last week we had 1,900 violent or armed engagements. That's a nice word for people killing each other. The world is in conflict and it has no way to resolve them. And the reason is that all the psychology of the earth will not replace what Jesus speaks and what Jesus can do through his cross. That's the biggest conflict that he resolved between heaven and earth when he died, and he brought us to God again. Now, having said this, even in the church, even in the people who are saved and are sanctified and all of that, there's conflict. Jesus knew that. And so in Matthew 18, he brings a template for how to solve conflict. But I want to pick it up from the end before I tell you the template, because the why is way more important. Why is it important that a church is able to resolve conflict? Why is it important that a connect group should be able to resolve conflict? Why is it important that you should be able to resolve conflict within your closest brothers and sisters in Christ? Look at this. Matthew 18, after talking how to resolve conflict, Jesus says, "Truly I say to you, whatever you bind on earth, shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." I never saw this in context, but where the authority of the church is mentioned, it's just right after where, dealing with sin between two people is being mentioned. So that's where it starts. And then he says, "Again, I say to you, if two of you agree on earth about anything they ask, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven." So answers in prayer have to do with how much they agree. Isn't that interesting? And the last one, this is the crucial one. "For where two or three are gathered in my name, there I am among them." Now the word gathered is called symphonize. So where you and I symphonize, where you and I we harmonize, basically, we work together in a harmonious way. That's where Jesus is present. So do we want to be a church? Do we want to be a connect group? Do we want to be a circle of friends where God is present, Jesus is present amongst us? Well, then let's better be good at resolving conflict. Now, this is why, if a church wants to have authority, if a church wants to have answers in prayer, if the church wants to have Jesus around them, they need to learn how to address sin between two people and resolve them in that template. Here is how. If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault. Between you and him alone. Oftentimes I've seen how people just, talk about other people multiple times until they actually talk to the person. By then, rumor has spread. By then, the problem is actually large, has not been addressed. We often wait so long until we address something. If somebody sins against you, go and tell him, tell her. Don't let that brother, don't let that sister stay in sin. Sin is so serious. Why would you leave them in a problem that they are doing? Right? It should be love that helps us address things to each other. But if he does not listen, take one or two others along with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of two or three witnesses. And if he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. Now, how did Jesus treat Gentiles and tax collectors? How did he love them? How did he love us when we were sinners, enemies of God? Romans says that when we were enemies of God, he died for us. That's how God loved his enemies. Now, there is more and more distance, as you can see, right? He doesn't listen, two or three. He doesn't listen, church. He doesn't listen, Gentile. But as you take more and more distance, more and more love is going to be needed. You need to be protected if somebody doesn't change their behavior. but you will need to have more and more love for that person. And that's why you need community. That's why you need to be together in this. If somebody does not respond, then bring 2 or 3 people's witnesses, not to gang up on the other person. They're not called allies. They're people. Witnesses are people that see things. So they see it from different angles and they will bring wisdom in it. The church might be the place where you can actually discuss it publicly. Now, obviously, in a modern time and churches have evolved, etc., there's leadership structure. Use that as far as possible. But if you have issue with me, please let it be known that you can talk to me. And if I don't listen, bring in somebody. If I don't listen, bring it to the board, right? That's how far I would go. But then also talk to me directly. Thank you. This should be common practice. And often I know it's not. I think we're afraid of conflict. Why don't you spend some time now as a connect group talking about this unity, talking about the ideal, a church that is authoritative, a church that prayer is being listened to, a church that Jesus is present. And then discuss, what could enlarge our unity? How could we grow in unity? Because that's the goal. The goal is not to bash on people for their sin. The goal is actually to grow in unity. That's what it is about. Discuss that if you're in a connect group. How can we grow in unity? Where can we learn from each other in dealing with conflict maybe also? And if it matters to you, if you're in conflict this week, why don't you pray about it, talk to God, and then do one step at a time. Call that person up, says, we need to talk. Write that text, say, hey, I'd like to talk. Don't do it via email. Don't do it via text. First contact can be done like that, but then when the issue comes on the table, use eye-to-eye contact. Be in the place. And if there's no change, then go through those steps. My hope is that we would grow as a church in our unity, in our love for each other, and in our hate for sin. That's what I'm thinking. All right. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful week.